Namaskar. Today we will try to understand a new climate type called the temperate continental steppie climate. Steppie word we are very familiar, as we all know that it is related with the grassland. But before discussing this grassland, let me discuss the distribution of this steppy type of climate. So, as the word temperate is written, I have discussed the word temperate many more number of times, the zone which is above the tropical region. So, it cannot be in this one because this is the Tropic of Cancer and this is the Capricorn. So, this is the tropic region, but we are discussing about the temperate and continental means not very close to the, and basically in the land portion you can say.
What is in a
Yes, and not very close to the ocean, because we will also see the effect of continentality here. So the temperate continental, so the distribution as far as is concerned in the northern hemisphere, this is experienced, the maximum proportion is experienced here, where it is known as what? Steppie.
Europe.
Yes, steppie. And here there is it is known as what? There is a country called Hungary. In Hungary it is called Pustaj. Pustaj in Hungary. So steppie here, and in Hungary Pustaj. Here it is called prairie. You know this region, prairie. Here Pustaj, and this is steppie in the mid portion of Russia. Here Manchurian. Manchurian is also a dish.
Yes.
What is the full name of this Manchurian? What? Okay, but I think that dish also related with China. Okay, so Manchurian grasslands are where? In China. So this is the northern hemisphere, the distribution. Now let's come in the southern hemisphere. This, in this place, this is known as New Zealand. So here we see Canterbury grasslands. Canterbury. In Australia, Downs. Okay. Here it is called Veld. And here in Argentina it is called Pampas. And in Brazil it is known as Campos. So Brazil is here, so it is Campos, and in Pampas in Argentina. So this is the major distribution of this kind of climate. Means in these places this kind of climate is experienced. Now what actually happens in this climate? So first thing I want to discuss about the precipitation, the rainfall. Look, what happens that the rainfall in these areas does not happen heavy downpour. Because if it were heavy downpour, then why would we experience the grass? We could have enjoyed the big and heightful trees, as the trees require comparatively more amount of water. So the rainfall which happens in a tropical zone during the monsoon, here what the rainfall which happens, that is the less than the monsoonal rainfall. But it is also not too less, which enables the formation of the desert. So it is in between the desert and the monsoon in the temperate region. And this rainfall enables the growth of the grass, because it is neither too much or not too less. It is very perfect for the growth of the grass. And these are the grasslands in the world. Manchurian, steppie, pustas, prairie, pampas, veld, downs, and this is Canterbury. So these are the major grasslands. So the rainfall is clear. All right. However, one thing I want to tell you, that if you compare the rainfall of northern hemisphere as compared to southern hemisphere, in southern hemisphere the rainfall is comparatively more. Comparatively more. Why? Why comparatively more? Because they are very close to the ocean. However, the word continent is written, but in GC Leong, when you go through with that, you will see that although they are very close to the ocean, almost connected to the ocean, and they experience a sort of maritime climate, even then we count these places under the steppe climate because they have a close similarity. Otherwise, you can technically differentiate them. So the rainfall in the southern hemisphere in the temperate zone happens more. The reason is very close to the ocean, and the second reason is that just if you see in this portion there is a warm current that is called East Australian warm current. Here one more warm current is. Which one is?
Bangula.
No, Bangula is a cold current. Agulhas. And here Brazilian current. So Brazilian current is a warm current. This one Agulhas is a warm, and East Australian current is a warm current. And I have discussed in my previous classes that if there were cold current, they would create the desiccating effect, and because of that the rainfall hardly happens. But here we are experiencing the warm current. So whatever was being done by the cold current desiccating effect, just opposite will be done by the warm currents. That's why what will happen, the rainfall will take place here. This kind of warm currents is not visible. After all, it's a continent region. One more thing you need to keep in mind, that as they are the temperate zones, they will come under the impact of westerlies, not the trade winds. Because trade wind, the area of trade wind belongs to this one, the tropical. But this is, since it's a temperate, in temperate, what happens? The trade winds, the westerlies are experienced. So westerlies, does the rain fall? Okay. One local wind I want to discuss. The westerlies, on this portion they will do the rainfall. However, they are on the western side. So what happens, that as they reach close to the western side, the amount of rainfall keeps on decreasing. But it does not mean they will not do any rainfall. This impact is very much visible here, because here the portion of the land mass is huge. So when the westerlies will get the water from this Mediterranean, what will happen? As the steppe and pustas little far away from the Mediterranean and the ocean bodies, what will happen? By the time the westerlies will reach over this portion or that portion, the amount of rainfall will be very less, or at least will be to that extent which is comfortable enough to have the growth of grass. Local wind I want to discuss here, because look, what happens, that if you see its latitudinal position, during winter and during summer, what happens, that look, these places, since they are very close to the ocean, therefore they will experience the Mumbai sort of climate, neither too hot nor too cold. But since these have a huge land mass and have a distance from the ocean body or the water body, and any place which has the distance from the ocean body, you will always see there that the temperature in those places during summer increases a lot and during winter decreases a lot. There is no any mediocre sort of thing as it is visible in the southern hemisphere. So, and this effect where high temperature during summer and low temperature during winter is experienced, this phenomena in geography is known as continentality. Continentality means the places are far away from the ocean body. That's why they experience a huge range of temperature. So here what happens that during during winter the temperature is very less, and almost this which is known as the prairie, the granaries of the world, because the maximum amount or the production of wheat happens
Yeah.
here only. So a local wind is there because prairies are the grounds of the grasses. What happens that during the winter time these grasses are freezed, and when they are freezed then no any cattle can graze the grass because they don't have that kind of capacity. Nature has not made them to destroy the ice and eat the grass. So what happens that a wind called Chinook is also a helicopter taken, means we got it from USA.
Yes.
So Chinook is also a local wind there, and this Chinook is a phone. Phone is also a hot wind. This is also a hot wind. This starts its journey from the southwest of USA, and when it crosses the rocky range, and after crossing, it comes on this side. Since it's a hot wind, however, little bit temperature decreases and is good upward, but that temperature decreases, it does not mean the temperature will go less than zero. Even then it remains hot enough. So what happens when this wind comes in the contact of the prairie, the freezed prairie grasses, the prairie grasses gets melted. And when they get melted, the smile on the faces of the people who have the cattle comes on their faces, because they know now we can go with their cattle and our cattle can graze the grass as the Chinook has come and it has increased the temperature and melted the grasses. So that's how, just understand what is the economic significance of this grass for the people, for the poor people who live on that side. The whole life, the whole economy is dependent upon this Chinook, because their cattle, the whole story is embedded there. So this is the local wind, and as I have told you that in the northern hemisphere the temperature variation is more in comparison to this one. So we have discussed the temperature, precipitation. Now one more thing is the crops. So crops, look, what happens that they don't grow the crops the way we are growing various varieties, because the temperature is not very favorable for. So what happens that the crops, the main thing in this region is the wheat, the production of wheat happens, and this place produces the maximum amount of wheat in the world, and the majority portion of that wheat is exported in the international market, especially to the European countries, the Britain, Netherlands, and these kinds of countries, because they have a lots of population Hence, they cannot fulfill the stomach of each and every citizen. They are dependent upon. So, the wheat, after that, the maize is also grown. Okay. Other than this, if you compare the grass, steppie grass, which has various names, what do you think? One grass is called savanna, and the one is steppie. Which is more nutritious?
Savannah.
Yes. All right. So what happens that steppie, actually in some places the height of steppie is more, because in some places there are those zones where the rainfall happens comparatively more. So those places where the rainfall is comparatively more and close to the ocean or the water body, naturally they will get more rainfall. So the grass of that place is comparatively more lengthier than the rest of the places where the rainfall is not as much. And the lengthier grass is very nutritious. The more lengthy the grass will be, it means it is getting the more water, and it will be more healthier for the cattle and for the animals. Okay. Other than this, I want to discuss some of the problems of this kind of climate, and one of them is that there are two terms. The one is called extensive farming, extensive, and the one is intensive. Extensive and intensive farming. What do you think? In these places, what kind of farming is prevalent? Extensive or intensive? It is extensive. The meaning of extensive is here that these places, since they have big grounds, but they don't use a very innovative technology, at least in comparison to the technology which is being used by the intensive one. And they also don't, they have comparatively less labor force, less technology. And because of this less labor force, less technology, what happens? That they grow. I mean, just think, despite these limitations, this is the world's biggest, you can say, wheat producer state. Despite of, if they would start having this intensive farming, then where the production would reach? So in intensive farming, what happens? That the productivity increases, but here the productivity is not as much. But the main thing is this, that they have big grounds. So even if you are producing a small quantity, because you have big ground, so naturally you can compete with the countries who are doing intensive farming, like Britain, Netherlands, Denmark. These countries, they follow the intensive pattern of farming, but they are very small in area, so they produce a lot. But when you compare the overall production, it is like the economy of Britain and the economy of India almost equal. By the way, technically India has surpassed the economy of Britain. But do you know, the per capita income of Britain is 20 times the per capita income of an average Indian, because they have the 20% less population than India. So when you see overall production or overall GDP of India is more, but per capita income of Britain is 20 times more. So in the same way, overall production is more, but the productivity of the countries which follow this intensive farming, the productivity is more. So this is one of the problem. Now what they are doing, that they are also inclining towards the intensive farming. They are bringing the technologies. Other than this, what happens, that the steppie grass, actually the steppie grass is not as nutritious as the grass. You have heard this was also asked in MPPSC, that was alfalfa, very famous in Australia. So alfalfa grass is replacing the steppie grass, because the alfalfa is very nutritious, and when cattle eat this grass, the whole thing gets increases. Their health and their international price in the market, in international market, increases. Their economic value increases because they are getting the good food. And in return of all these things, the farmers, they become very rich. And that is the main reason. One day in a newspaper, in Economic Times, what happened, that a farmer, he was crying, having his head on the Mercedes. It was the news of USA. So this is the situation of the farmers of USA, that they are crying, having their face on the bottom of their Mercedes. And in India, in some places, even the bullock cart is not possible. So some of the people started to think, what kind of farmer is this? He has the Mercedes and crying. So this was the alfalfa grass, how the alfalfa grass is being introduced in these places. Other than this, what happens, the cattles, actually the cattles are also being crossed, or the breeding is being done, and because of that cross or the breeding, what happens, that they are getting comparatively more economically important species of the cattle. And in Australia, this business of the breeding, this cross is very famous, and in rest of the places it is also being practiced. So these were some of the things related to this temperate, continental, steppie climate. We have discussed the precipitation, we have discussed the temperature, we have discussed how alfalfa grass is replacing
Steppie.
Yes. We have also discussed the warm currents, how they are responsible for the rainfall. We also discussed the cattle breeding industry, how it is growing in Australia, the intensive farming and the extensive farming. What else is remaining? Alright, so look, whatever is remaining, I will go through with GC Leong once again. I think we have covered the significant things given in this chapter, but if anything is remaining, I will discuss in my next lecture. Thank you.